All right, so now we're in beginnings of stage 3. And stage 3 is where a couple things, you're going to really work on color. You're going to tighten up all the little sections. You're going to kind of focus on details. You're going to find areas of high contrast, or where there's a light edge and a dark edge that meet, which is areas of high contrast. Just make sure those are clear. For example, where the shirt, I have a dark shirt, dark gray shirt. So I'm going to have that here to create gray. I'm just going to try to mix complementary hues together, some blue, red, and yellow, and that will kind of gray everything out. I'll show you that in a bit. A couple things here. I want to talk about the background and how I transition from dark here and light here deliberately, and I'll explain that in a second. That doesn't exist behind me. That's something I created. And if you wear glasses, they are really fun to draw, to be honest with you. I wear glasses, but I don't wear them consistently. But I will say, if you have glasses, the shadows, if you can see here, the shadows that they create are really great to get that. They help kind of show the contour of your face, if your face appears flat. So glasses are kind of nice. But when you're drawing the glasses, you want to do it at the very end, towards the end, because then it's easy to line up these lines here, the exterior parts of the glasses, with what exists in your face. So for example, if this edge here is right next to your eye, then you can draw a line down, but then you want to make sure you sight, they're easy to sight and angle and get those angles in. So I would recommend that, but you want to do it towards the end of the drawing. Don't do it as you're drawing. It's going to be too complicated. You have to work around it. You want to kind of draw without your glasses on. The other thing that I was going to mention was this here, and this hit my shirt when I was transporting it, so some of the stuff came off. As you notice, it's quite delicate, so this is definitely something you're going to have to spray when you're finished, and even you might even have to spray it mid-drawing. If you find that it's just too vulnerable that you need to spray it, you can spray it mid-drawing and then work on top of the spray and the spray again. That's fine. People do that. But I'm going to talk about this. So the reason I have this dark on the background here is because I wanted the skin, I wanted contrast between the skin and this. And this isn't dark. This is like a mid-tone. And the reason I chose a mid-tone because I knew my beard was going to be a little darker. So I wanted it a little darker than that. And I also knew that my shirt was going to be dark, was going to be the darkest thing. Because I had this gray shirt on, and I like the gray shirt because of the contrast between this and the light of my skin here. So I made this a mid-tone, which is going to help this pop out, help the beard pop out, and then also help this pop out. So it's a different value than all 1, 2, 3 values that I'm going to have here. And then I slowly transition this into, and I haven't finished this yet. I just kind of lightly put some content on. But it slowly transitions from one value, and then it kind of switches over into a lighter tone. And the reason why the lighter tone is here is because my hair is darker on this side, and this side's in shadow. So since this side's in shadow, I can have this light. Since this is in the light, I have this dark, and I just kind of transition the fade from dark to light on the top there. If you look at a lot of portrait painting, traditional portrait painting, they do that trick pretty often. So then when I can draw the hair in, you'll be able to see this light contrast. And also the shirt will be dark here, so you'll have the light contrast there. But you want it maybe a little bit, well, I don't know, the skin here is probably going to be, it's lighter, it's not as dark or red as this, but I'll have to figure out what I want darker, the skin here or the background. So we'll figure that out. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. A couple things here, the neck. I haven't really discussed this too much in the beginning, but the neck is something that a lot of students will make super long because we're like, oh, we have a neck and the neck is this long and our body starts here. That's not true. I'm just going to take my jacket off for a quick second. The trapezoids, which are located right here, and they're muscles that connect your neck to your shoulders, and they're pretty big. They're all they kind of start the back muscles there. That's where your neck ends and your shoulders begin. And it kind of goes on a diagonal down. If you never drew a self-portrait before, you just think the neck goes here and then your shoulders go out on a horizontal line straight out. That's not true. Don't draw what you think is there, draw what you see. So meaning when you're looking at yourself, where the neck meets the trapezoid muscle here, you could draw a line straight across your face and be like, oh, that's right where my chin is. So my chin's right here. It's kind of right a bit above my chin. So then you can draw a line straight over, and then you can just mark it. Be like, all right, that's where the neck is. Or that's where the neck ends, and that's where the trapezoid begins. And it just so happens my t-shirt is around there as well. So there's three things that meet at that one spot. Super important. And as long as your chin's in the right spot, then you can run this over and be like, all right, that's there. The next thing I'm looking at is how much of the neck here is showing, and where does it run into my ear? And it looks like it runs in my ear right here. So that's important as well. If you remember in the beginning of this drawing, I had my neck pretty wide and I looked like a football player, and it was way too distorted. So I had to kind of shrink my head because my proportions were off before I got to this point. And then the other thing is that the neck here, if I were to draw a vertical line, a vertical alignment straight up for where my neck is, it looks like it kind of goes where the corner, well, hold on a second. I have to turn my head. It goes where my nose, like right in the middle of my nose, and then probably in the corner of my eye. So like, or I'm sorry, right between my eyes. So this is where my neck is right here. And if I were to draw a line straight up, it hits my nose there, and then it goes between my eyes. So you can use just a pencil and then line it up and just see like, oh, wow. I didn't realize how deep that was. To be honest, I think it's actually a little bit more. That's a little better because my neck was a little thick there. And then it starts to go out. Okay. One more thing too. I'm going to talk about mixing. I've talked about this before, but when I put this backdrop, whenever I put something down, you're going to mix probably 3 or 4 different colors, and you're going to notice that some colors, usually the light ones, mix better. They're a little bit softer of a conte, and some of the darker ones or more colorful ones like this one, they're a little bit more harder of avocante. So if you were to put this down like that, it doesn't pop up as well. Oops. Some do, some don't. Everyone's a little different, but you're going to notice that you're going to have to mix these in. So if you were to put conte down, you're probably going to go back in and put a light value on top. So you get some substance there, some meat, medium on the paper. Don't sit there forever and smear it in. You're just smearing in, making the dust just disappears. You don't have any medium on there. You have to get some medium on there and make some decisive things. And then eventually it looks painterly, like it's a toothy paper, so it's going to pick it up. It's going to hold it in the little pockets above the tooth. One more thing, I'm going to talk about the shirt here a little bit. I'll probably get into this a little later, but what I was talking about before was this is going to have to get dark. So I'm going to use my darkest brown. My phone died and I made this color, so I'm just going to redo this quickly, and then I'm going to start a time lapse. So to achieve this kind of grayish tone, what I did was I put a little, oops, I didn't use that color. I used this brown, which was like kind of like that dark, that's what it looks like there, grayish brown. It's just saturated. And then on top of that, I just took my blue and on top of that, I'm going to put my red. Now, there's red and brown, as I said before. There's red and brown, and when the red and the blue mix up, they're close to complementary hues, so they're going to desaturate each other a little bit. So it kind of grays out all by itself. And you kind of see the difference between this and this. This has red in it, and I guess I'll put some red in it just to kind of show you. But if I put too much red, you can kind of see it becomes a little bit more on the violet-y side. So you can kind of see the difference between these two. So I'm going to add more blue, mix it in, and now it feels blue. And then I'm going to go back to this brown and mix it in again, and now I'm back to where this is. So as you're doing this, if you have this kind of a color shirt on, you can kind of see that I'm slowly getting this darker grayish tone. Because we don't have gray in here, you have to mix your gray. How do you mix gray? Complementary hues create gray. So if you look at the color wheel, yellow is on the top. Complementary hue of yellow is on the opposite side of a color wheel, which is violet. So if you mix yellow and violet, they'll desaturate each other and kind of gray each other out. Might not be a perfect gray, but it's going to be a very desaturated version of either blue or I'm sorry, of either that yellow or violet. In this case, we used green and red are actually complementary hues, but blue and orange are complementary hues, but there's red and orange. So there's blue and orange, or blue and red can be somewhat complementary. However, they do make violet, but it's going to be a really grayed out, desaturated version of violet. And because of that, I just thought of this. If I wanted to lighten this up, this is the closest thing to yellow, because now this is somewhat violet. I can put this yellow on top, and it really starts to turn gray. And I'm just smearing just a little bit of the yellow, and then I smear it in. But the thing about that color here is it's light in value. So when you lay it down, it's going to lighten up the value, which is good when I start to draw the fabric and there's light and dark tones. And I can use this for the light tones, and then I can use the blue and the darker versions of it for the dark tones. That's how I would go about it. So I'll get to this eventually, but for now I'm just going to do a time lapse, and you can watch where I work. And again, I'm going to start with here and tighten this up, and then I'm just going to go around and go wherever I go. All right, so I'm going to talk about what I did for all that time lapse. This is not finished. There's still another round for me to go, but I've roughed in the rest of my shirt, and I used a variety of colors, as I explained before previously. I double checked that my trapezoid and my neck met up. I think it was a little higher than what I thought. You can see where the neck comes down and the trapezoid meets it, and there's this little change of direction right there, and then the shirt follows the rest. So I have that there. A couple little tricks though. When you're trying to work in front and behind something, like this is behind, clearly. We're gonna have an audience member here. This is behind clearly, and this is in front. And I'm gonna do a variations of things. For example, I can blend towards, soften. I guess this is the better term to use. I can soften those edges, and if you look at a photograph, sometimes it's blurry in the background and more clear in the front. It creates a sense of atmospheric perspective. So you can soften some of the edges around the back parts of the heads if it starts to feel a little bit too illustrated. You can kind of like soften it. You have some liberties there because the medium's kind of like paint, so you can be a little painterly with it. I also took some liberties here. You can see that I was struggling with the value of the neck and the value of the background almost became the same. You couldn't tell where the neck ended and the background began. So So then what I did from there is I just made it a little darker here and I slowly faded it up. You don't really recognize that's happening, but you do see that there's a contrast between the neck, and the neck pops out now. Now, I always like to walk back away from my drawing and just see if things appear to be correct in terms of proportions and things of that nature. Is my neck too high? When you're up so close, it's hard to see that. So I always recommend walking back or taking a photograph of it and looking at the photograph because it's smaller. So it's almost like walking backwards. I've started to work the beard in, and I put a little blue on this side of the beard, and I blended that area in. And then when the beard, and a lot of you don't have beards, but when the beard blends into the skin there, and the hairs are kind of shorter, I just kind of ran my finger down and softened that edge, and it's kind of created the illusion that it blends back in. I went back in and I tightened my eyes up, and if you could look closely, I'll have a photograph of this so you can see closely. But if you look closely here, there's a white of the eye, which isn't bright white, it's kind of like a grayed out white. And then above it, there's a shadow, and it's the cast shadow of the skin that's above the eye. And I did the same thing over here, and it also goes in where the iris is. And then I started to kind of put in some of those shadow lines. I call them shadow lines, where the eye meets the skin meets the eyeball, and there's lines there and things. So I started to articulate that, and that starts to sharpen things up. And I got some of my bright red, and I put it right in the tear duct, because there's a lot of like red activity there, blood vessels and whatnot. So there's a sense of reality, and I put it right in the tear duct towards the end of the drawing. You want to do it too early because you don't know exactly where everything is. Also, your lips aren't going to be bright red. They're going to be skin tones mostly, and then they're going to be kind of desaturated reds and whatnot. But I did put some red here because I needed to get some intensity back, and then I go back in and then I layer with something that's a little less intense, or I can blend it in better or something like that. But the red still exists, it's still there, and there's a transition of value. I could work on the lips a little longer. I started to work the nose a little bit. Nose is tricky, and I think I kind of got it to where it works at the moment, where there's an outline here as I'm looking at myself, coming from the light of the windows that creates this like white line, and it helps to differentiate between this and then the back part of my cheek. So I used that, and it kind of worked. And there's a little bit of creases here in the middle of my brow. It makes me look angry, but that's fine. A lot of your self-portraits might look angry, it's okay. And then I made sure I put that in. So there's a lot of little subtle variations of value within the forehead, value and hue. I put a little bit of blue here because there's like right here, there's this little darker spot, and your scalp, changes direction and slowly turns up, and there's a little dip there. So I made sure I had that. And then definitely over here, it's going to be on the bluer side because it's in shadow. Underneath here, you can see there's a lot of blue. It's actually violet. And then on the back side of the neck, that's reflected light, almost very similar to the spheres that you were drawing. So that's a little lighter here compared to that. And then up here, there's the light that's coming from the light source that I have. And then there's this cast shadow right under the neck right here that I put right there. And then there's a little like shadow play within that the nose creates on the face. I'm playing around with that. So right now, I have it where all I have to do is this one more kind of walk through everything and just tighten it up. I'm pretty satisfied with what's happening in the mask. I'll probably just go in and do a little bit. But at this point, it's easy to take off more than you put on because it's such a dry medium, and I really don't want to restructure any of that. So I just might do a couple little touches here and there, almost like the red and then the dark lines. But it's also hard because these are not points, and you can't exactly put it where you want it. So you might have to get a little creative there. I'll probably work the ear just a little bit. I might work the hair just a little bit. Might work the beard just a little bit. And definitely I'm going to work the shirt. And just like the fabric drawing you just completed, I'm just going to start to put some lights, mid-tones, and darks within the shirt. And I'm basically finished. And once again, about the hair, see how kind of soft this back is? But if you look at my hair here, there's a hard edge between the back. Again, I'm taking liberties and I'm softening the edges. So you can do that at times. You can soften the edge where the hair meets the face, like I did here in my beard, and I did it in a couple spots here. And and I'll probably do it a little bit down here. I'm not sure yet where I might like that hard edge. And I think I'm going to keep the hard edge of the shirt here, but I might soften the edge where the shirt meets the background. I'm not sure about that yet. I kind of did it here. But if you have a sharp edge, it's going to create a focal point. Do you want the focal point to be on the shoulders, or do you want the focal point to be on the eyes? I think the eyes are the latter is the better decision. All right, until next time.